Hey folks, welcome back to the Cotswold Collectibles YouTube channel. I am Greg Brown, owner of Cotswold Collectibles. It's been quite a long time since we've been doing any videos to upload, but we decided we're going to start off fresh. We brought Ace back, and this time Ace is going to be talking to us about knockoff figures, accessories, and stuff like that. So pay attention to this, because I'm sure everybody who has bought a collection or whatever sees these little odds and ends. These videos are going to explain to you where these odds and ends are coming from and who actually manufactured them and stuff like that. So take it away, Ace.
Well, the first thing, it's great to be back and talk about all kinds of things like knockoff. And you're going to hear me say the words cheap and junk and garbage a whole lot here. And I mean that, all those terms, lovingly, because this is the cheap garbage of the toy collecting, which is super awesome and is something that we all have touched at some point. I will tell you, 99% of all collections I've ever bought, every Foot Locker I've ever purchased almost has had some sort of knockoff piece in it. I mean, let's face it, Mama didn't have $1 million and G.I. Joe was not the cheapest product out there, so it was really easy to get a figure from G.I. Joe and then have knockoff accessories, and then have maybe one of G.I. Joe's buddies be a knockoff guy, or the bad guy be the knockoff guy. And the thing is about knockoffs that's so fantastic to me is there's so many of them, I feel like I will never know what all of them are. I mean, every time I turn around, there's a new package, there's somebody sends me a photo of something I've never seen before, and that's what makes it fun and exciting. And you know, another thing about knockoffs is that they're not super crazy expensive typically. I mean, in comparison to a vintage, modern G.I. Joe, they're way more inexpensive, and it's just like I said, they're kind of junk, and like I said, I say that lovingly, but the junk, the happiness and the joy is in the junk, and they really are poor quality overall, and
low molded bodies. Yeah.
And that's the first thing I'm going to say to you is, look at the quality of G.I. Joe. I mean, G.I. Joe has really well molded stuff, really well clean flashing, clean uniforms, thicker uniforms, and it really just typically everything that's been made in the knockoff, the quality is just nowhere near of what G.I. Joe is now. Some of that early knockoff stuff, and we're going to show you some of that stuff, does have really high quality, and you really kind of have to look super close to tell. But again, there's a whole lot of fun. I really want to start we're going to talk in this video mostly about bodies and body styles. So we're going to divide this up, I think, into 3 different videos. We're going to talk about body styles and then kind of carded uniforms, and then we'll do some close-ups of different carded or different accessories so you can kind of see things. So G.I. Joe comes out in '64. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I could not tell you when a majority of these guys came out. One of these figures I think is dated 1970. Most of them don't even have a real manufacturer or even labeled on it. They change. I think that a lot of the stuff was probably made in China at the same factory or the one right next door.
Next door to it, yeah.
Where they would take the item from here and then basically do another mold of the exact same item, and that's why you can kind of tell. But it really started off. Let's talk about figures here. The 12-inch figure in 1964 was a hot ticket of a toy, and as you can imagine, everybody wanted a piece of that toy. And so what they decided to do was, let's go make a copy of that. And really the most famous kind of copy of all of that is the Fighting Yank. And as you can see, they did a coffin box. Now this is from what I know, this is the early coffin box of the Fighting Yank. What's interesting is it's actually a stapled box. You can kind of see on the inside, but they did artwork of packaging on the side. The action soldier, I think as Greg, you point out, that's like the saddest looking soldier going off the
most
battle.
Unmotivated soldier ever.
Yeah, he's not super, it's not super aggressive, much like the San Petrucci stuff. But anyway, you can see these boxes. And what's really cool, I mean, I always love the price tag. This has a price tag of $1.99, and I think Joe was selling for about $3 at that time, $3.50,
$3.50,
yeah, somewhere in that. But if you look at the figure, I mean, here's how this one came out in the box. I mean, this guy's got a little bit of chewing on his nose, but the uniform is really thin. But look at his hands. And here I'm going to show you this here. The hands are really cool, and this is where the knockoff got in trouble, because as you can see in the hand, they did a direct copy of the G.I. Joe hand, and it has the world famous backwards thumbprint.
Right.
And that's kind of interesting. This guy is Fighting Yank. The brand of it is PGD Incorporated, someplace out of New York. I'm assuming they sued. I know they sued. I know they got a cease and desist from it. This actually, ironically, is wearing Hasbro G.I. Joe boots. And if you want to learn about G.I. Joe boots versus the knockoffs, please watch the boot video. But the knockoff boots are so kind of crappy. I put some, this guy was in my display at home. That's how I had him up, just to kind of tell a story. But he has a dog tag, and I'm not 100% sure if that dog tag is accurate. There's actually a metal Fighting Yank dog tag that comes with this guy. And, you know, they both say Fighting Yank, but this one is PGD and this one is Mego, and this is 1970. So, and boy, he's got some pretty groovy sideburns on that guy, but he's just a junky figure, even in comparison to this one.
Oh.
I mean, this is light and blow molded compared to G.I. Joe. He looks cool, but he's really pretty poseable. I mean, he's got elbows and, he can bend his knees, sort of. You'll frequently find these guys broken with a broken foot or a broken arm because they're just cheap.
So these would have been, they still would have had the elastic connect in the arms and then the legs to the head.
Yes.
Like the vintage one.
Similar. I mean, the body is, as you can see, this is like a twisty blow mold, but
right.
There is elastic in the arms. Right. And this is it's not the head, you know how on the Joe body, the neck post is connected to the leg post, which is, and that is not the case here. These are just,
oh, wow.
You know, it's just like a little rubber band on the inside there, keeping that together, and that's a piece of elastic. And in fact, on this one, the head popped off, and you can see that's part of the body itself.
Even the neck post is blow molded.
Oh yeah, it's blow molded. Again, it's junk, but it's cool. It's cool junk, and that's what I really, really like about it. And I'll be quite even honest with you about this. I don't even know if this uniform that this guy's on, it could be Action Man for all I know. It just was a guy that I got in a collection, and I liked the body, and I put him up there. But you can see the body style. This is the way that it would have come in the box in probably 64, 65 maybe. There's no date on this. Again, I know how you guys are in the comments, and whatever Greg and I get wrong, you're more than welcome to tell us how stupid we are, because I appreciate it. And the thing is, too, is the great thing about knockoffs, even like the foreign stuff, it's like we're all learning here. And the way you learn is by looking at stuff. And if you've got stuff in your collection, boy, I'd love to hear about it and be shared about it and all that kind of stuff, because this is how we all learn about it. But these are the Fighting Yank figures from the early version of the PGD ones that were, I'm sure, were the ones that were sued, that got talked about. And again, you know, the box is pretty cool. It's a nice little coffin box that looks neat, and it's a nice look on the shelf. And I find it interesting that they use the exact same Fighting Yank name Mego did. And we've got some carded, when we show the carded stuff, and they've got pictures of all the different sets on it.
On the back.
Which is cool. And, you know, we got to collect them all. And this is the one that's dated 1970. Right. It was Roman numerals, and you had to tell me what that was. All right, so to talk about more different ones, another one that's really kind of popular out there was Mr. Action. Mr. Action is really a very common accessory card that's out there. I think everybody probably has these flippers and maybe that mask in their set. Mm-hmm. There are bagged accessory sets that came with those exact same items in it. And some of those are some of the most popular knockoff stuff that's out there. I really got to tell you the artwork. You know, we talked about the junkiness of the actual figure itself. This is blank on the back, but if you look at the artwork, I mean, the artwork's really cool. I mean, my favorite one, I think, is this one right here, which has that big shark on it. You know, it's just really nice. And
yeah, a lot of those knockoff companies, they just took like bogarted somebody else's artwork and just cut and paste and did that. Yeah. These are all original, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I mean, you'll see a lot of those Mr. Action. We'll look at these in the Mr. Action thing, but that little guy who's grunting, I guess, of some sort, is on a lot of their packaging, and that's a great thing.
And this company was LJN, right?
Yes, LJN, and they made a lot of stuff, and they were a really big toy company, and obviously it's close and similar to G.I. Joe, but not anywhere near enough. And you know, Mr. Action made those play sets, and if you look at those play sets, the artwork in the play sets is amazing. I mean, they may be a cardboard backing sheet, but it's really,
those play sets were pretty cool because I mean they came as part of like you said, the packaging, but then you take it apart, put it together, and you had like a submarine, you had like a wooded outpost, even like a western set, stuff like that. Yeah,
really neat stuff. And again, that's what's kind of fun of all the knockoff stuff. You know, another guy that's relatively common is this Action Buddy. And what I find interesting about this Action Buddy guy is he looks like the exact same figure as the Fighting Yank. And for all we know, he very well could be. And if you notice, he's actually got the same sweater that this guy has on. So again, I don't know, but there is no marking on the back. There's no date on it. There's no nothing. And again, it's recommended for children over 5 years old.
Okay.
And it has movable arms and bendable legs. And I'm telling you, you know, we kind of remember these things at the dime store, and they were just, you know, typically incredibly expensive.
Yeah. Go to Franklin's or Perry's.
Yeah, and they'd be like, and here's another one I think is really cool. This one's got a similar head blow mold to that Action Buddy and Fighting Yank, but it's got a real cheap camouflage uniform with a belt, but it also comes with a soccer set, which I think is kind of interesting. And again, this one is King Sung Toys, but there's no date on it. And it's interesting, just beautiful. I like this guy right here. This is Combat Man.
This one's neat.
Oh. Yeah, this is really neat. Now, what's really funny, look at your Greg, the blow mold of his finger is awful.
Oh yeah,
it looks like somebody took a bite out of his finger. But what's interesting, they got company flags, they got a little camouflage on there, you know. But again, what I find interesting is there's no company, there's no date on it.
Really?
It's really just a vague, I don't quite understand why they do that. Now we've got Combat Man here. He's got a registered trademark on him, but who's got the registered trademark? But then we've got this box, which is empty, but it looks like they've got a Fighting Yank body in there. The Mego version of Fighting Yank.
And it's Combat Man too.
But it's got Mort Alexander on it. And so this has actually got a brand on it, which I think is pretty cool. But the box is obviously
totally roached.
A little bit flimsy. You find some of these figures just simple bag. I actually have another one of these at home that's in camouflage. It's actually a Fighting Ace, but this is an Action Soldier, and this is Madison Ltd at a Hackensack doing this, but another, you know, 5 and dimer. Look at the white boots. I kind of think that's funny. They're you know, tall white boots, but again, they're just, the quality of them is just so poor. I don't even imagine that uniform would probably go on a real Joe figure. That was the one thing about a lot of this stuff.
Because the bodies were so thin, contrasted to the G.I. Joe.
G.I. Joe had a puffy chest, at least, you know.
Stitching, and that's horrible.
Yeah, it's horrible. I think you'd send that back for QC.
Pretty.
That's not good enough for Cotswold quality.
I don't think he's 12 inches tall.
He's a little shy.
Yeah. Huh.
Anyway, and then, okay, so here's a couple other guys. And Greg and I were talking about this. I mean, he had this guy on the shelf. I'm not exactly sure who this guy is, but you know, he could be this Action Joe guy because he kind of looks like him, but he's a little bit different. This guy has a more articulated body, and this guy is more of a stiff
Just
arm.
real cheap.
Really cheap. I mean, this guy can bend his knees and bend his feet.
So he has some articulation.
Some articulation and all that
Same
stuff.
head, though.
Same head. But again, I don't think, this stuff certainly probably wasn't copyrighted at the time. And I'm sure that the factory is like, they're going, all right, I'll make you these blow molded guys and I'll make you these blow molded guys. And we'll put this one in a Ziploc bag and we'll put this one in a box. And you can charge, $1.29 and I'll just charge 99 cents.
Yeah, I need a cheaper body. So they have the cheaper body and they just pop the heads on.
That's probably what they did. Now, I'm going to kind of call these like my the 60s and early 70s kind of figures because they're painted head. Well, we know in 1970 the fuzz head came out. So in its blow molded, in its knockoff glory, we've got some fuzz headed guys. And then this is an articulated Action Joe non-fuzz head guy, but you can see how they're laying in the lounge position there. We've got Action Joe and Johnny Strong. There's nothing on the back. There is really cool artwork on the front, but there is no company name. There is a product number on both of these, but I cannot tell you who did it or what. Now, I will say this on this Action Joe, this is probably foreign because I'm looking at this and it's got some German or some Dutch names on it. But again, that head sculpt looks just like that guy. And then Johnny Strong, I've seen him. And then you've got this little love nugget that looks kind of like a Ken with a fuzz head and a beard, or kind of a cross between Ken and G.I. Joe. And this is the Totsie Bill Champ guy.
Really?
Yeah.
Twistable, bendable, hinged legs.
And I'm pretty sure that there's a Bill Champ Totsie that's not a fuzz head. So in fact, I know that there is that guy out there. I've seen him before.
What's crazy on this is that, to me, this one almost has a Mr. Action kind of vibe because of the art. Because I think the artwork is it original or did they rip off? Oh, they ripped him off. So.
Well, it's different.
Hey, they repainted them. So it's almost, to me, it's like they're ripping off the people that were ripping off.
Well, that's really true. You look at the position of this diver, it's in the knife and the shark, it's almost identical to that with just different colors and a different mask. And it's like they said, hey, copy this.
Yeah, just like they repainted it.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, because even that, when I saw that, I thought that kind of reminded me maybe of some later LJN stuff, the way that they did it. So,
and I'm going to tell you, I lied here. This is Fairland Toys right here. Have you heard of Fairland Toys?
No. I only knew about Mr. Action. And,
LJN,
Yeah, and then these guys. And what I always thought was really interesting is I remember when I was a young kid and my sister-in-law, she got me a toy at Perry's 5 and Dime, and it basically had this camouflage pattern, and then it just like one of the cheap little brown guns and everything like that, and then the hat. But the thing that I've noticed, and maybe you can chime in too, is almost all of them used this darker green fabric camouflage. I mean, this guy has the Action Marine one, but almost everything that I saw that was a knockoff during the 70s, they had a supply of this material.
Yeah, and maybe,
including the one I had.
Yeah, absolutely. That stuff. I mean, this has got a gun and a belt on the side of it that's just cheap and plastic on it. But,
just that little it was like an M2 carbine that everyone used.
Absolutely, that carbine. We'll talk about that on the gun one. But that's one thing you'll notice about this one here, this Bill Champ one. The talking about quality, the boots are actually falling apart, and there's a hole in the plastic, and so that's a chunk of the boot.
Is that a chunk of the boot? What color was the boot?
The boot was white.
Oh my gosh.
So anyway, that's why his toes are sticking out. He's not a Confederate soldier. He is a...
Did his flocking attach to the cardboard, or what is that? Is that the flocking on his head?
No, it's actually just a little bit of the label of the paper, but the flocking, actually, they did a nice job on the flocking.
That is crazy. Yeah, that's what blew me away with this whole thing when Ace was talking to me about it. It was like, I would just remember a handful of different companies, and then Ace just started unpacking all of these other different ones, and I was like, holy crap, I didn't realize. I thought there was like maybe 3 or 4, but it also gives... I guess, credence or credibility to Hasbro, because they feared it so much, they did the Defenders line, which was their version of the knockoff figures. So apparently there was a lot of competition going on in the 1970s to the point where they felt that they had to make their own, which again was a cheap blow molded body, I guess it's 5 points of articulation, crazy looking head, and cheaper fabrics and such like that. But
well, I remember as a kid being frustrated, especially in the mid 70s when they were really ramping down the production. I mean, it was really hard to find anything really G.I. Joe, but you could always find a knockoff thing.
Oh yeah.
And like I remember going and actually spending some of my my lawn mowing money on knockoff stuff just because it had a gun in it that I could use, or because you knew if you bought it the uniform wouldn't fit. You knew that was junk, but hey, it's got a white rifle in there. I'll buy that.
Got an extra rifle. I had the rifle with the scope that Hasbro did not have with their figure, and they had extra gear.
So I can see why. I mean, and I mean, it's really funny. I mean, I'll show some of the guns when we talk about it. I mean, some of the knockoff pieces that we had as a kid were highly coveted by my buddies because there was only 1 or 2 of them. And, and just because it's knockoff doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that it's not Hasbro.
It's not Hasbro. It's not as good quality as Hasbro.
Typically not as good. You look at some of that Redbox stuff and the Redbox stuff and the Leslo stuff. There's some really quality. And that's one thing that I really have had a hard time finding the packaged versions of.
Really?
Yeah, I don't have any Leslo stuff, and I don't have any Redbox stuff. It's just interesting that I'm sure it's out there, and maybe it'll come to me at some point. But it's just that stuff was such high quality that it got used.
Yeah, because I remember the Deep Sea Diver was almost like the G.I. Joe one, except in gold it was in silver.
Yeah. It's cool, and they're cool, Anyway, I think this wraps it up for our G.I. Joe, our knockoff 12-inch figures. And please, I look forward to your comments, and hope you guys enjoyed this one.
Yeah, please, folks. Like I said, we are not experts by any means. We're just trying to kind of scratch the surface of this. So if you have any comments, please feel free to comment below, and we will do our best to try to respond and possibly comment it in a future video. But again, this is going to be this is the first video of a multi-video series that we're going to be doing. So make sure that you check back in the next week or 2, and we'll be having another video on knockoffs. Until then, see you.